JB here, July 23rd, 2024, 3:23 in the fine afternoon. We have about 37 minutes to close. Not going to talk too much about the markets, some more chop here today. I'm just going to go quick into some of the names I'm looking at. Not much exciting for at least the positions I'm in. And then we have earnings. So I'll talk really quick about that. But S&P is pretty much flat on the session. Actually, it's up just a hair, a tight trading range today comparative to the moves we had on Thursday and Friday, and even yesterday's move. Some pretty much some chop pretty all day. So I guess you could take it more as a good thing, right? Because if we were going to have a continuation of downside, here's your chance. And the market, the sellers just, there's not enough sellers to pull the market down. So holding its ground. And then it's almost like we're back into that outperformance for the small caps. They're up nearly 1.5% here. And the IWM's back over 222. So good signs here heading into earnings this afternoon. There's Tesla reports earnings, 9.7% implied move. If you look at its average move over the last 8 quarters, it's the next day it's closed up or down 10%. So the implied move is pretty much in line in regards to premiums for the options. And Google implied move is 6.2%, and I think the average over the last 8 quarters is six. I did the math, 6.6%. Not names I normally trade into earnings, so I'll probably just stay away. But last quarter Tesla had that kind of like a little I wouldn't call it the snafu, but it wasn't a great beat and raise by any means, and the stock still did well. So it probably will frustrate shorts like it always does, and will be interesting. I always like to hear the commentary in the conference call. So that's earnings today. Uh, I just added more iRobot calls. I would say I actually had the September strikes up and I got filled at different levels. And then I thought I was getting the last little batch at 80. They went through at 75, but it was, well, either way. So I put 80-cent average on the September 10s. I still have September 15s, still have the August 15s. I spent almost like 45 minutes today going over some of the filings, the past news, the deal with Amazon. They have a debt agreement with Carlisle. It's almost like Carlisle has them by the neck, wherever they have their foot on their back, whatever you want to call it. That some of the deals in the final look like iRobot had a deal in place under the premise that Amazon, kind of like a filler until Amazon bought them out, right? So I think it was a $1.4 billion deal. Amazon bought iRobot, and then as things, I guess, came to light, they knocked the buyout price down into the 50s, and then you had the whole specter of the EU. So they're waiting for the EU to come out, and they blocked it, and then Amazon just pulled out, and then the stock's been in a tailspin ever since. And that debt deal with Carlisle seems to be sort of an overhang. But the other thing is they got a $75 million breakup fee from Amazon. So here's a company that does $900 million in revenues, although their revenues have declined on a year-over-year basis. There's a lot of competitive concerns. So people look at them and say, wow, they have a debt issue, they have a growth issue, they have a profit issue, and then they had a leadership issue. The founder and CEO left the company, but then uh, I forget his name, but he's from Gillette. He's been in other companies, similar consumer products, and he's taken over. And one of the things he did, and it's one of the reasons why I got iRobot calls a month ago or 2 months ago, he did an insider buy, right? So I always talk about insider buys as being, I wouldn't say the be all end all, but I don't really care too much about insider sells. But when you have an insider putting their own skin in the game, I think that bodes well, right? So I'll have probably more on a rant tomorrow morning or on the watch list, and maybe I'll put a quick post together. But you look, and even if they cut 30% of their staff last earnings, so I think that equated to, I don't know, 35 million. I have to go look. But it's almost like they're in the process of doing a turnaround, and if they have any semblance of a return to profitability, I think it trades into 15s and 20s and maybe squeezes. So not, I used to trade. I tell these stories. iRobot back in the day used to be one of my favorite names because there was a lot of different plays. Obviously, automation, home automation, a big deal. Alexa, being able to have it go to different areas of the home, and then you have the app, and then you have data. So not only once it does your home, then iRobot has the actual data for everybody's house, and probably more data than we want them to have. How many times people go in and out of the house, all those things. But of course, now you have all the other devices, the mesh devices that monitor people coming in and out of the house. So there's all that. So I don't know if that data is as valuable, But back in the day, that was kind of my bull case on iRobot. Just when it traded a heck of a lot higher valuation, was not only was it a product company, but it was a software company, a information company. They have a treasure trove of information about people's homes, dimensions. So I can go on rants for other days on iRobot. I'm not going to do it right now, but just so you can understand the rationale behind me adding some calls, it trades a third time revenues right now, right? So if it trades one times revenues, it's a $36 stock. I don't know if that's going to happen, but you never know. You start looking at some of the gaps, and I thought put on the watch list. It breaks this 12, and it's at 12 right now. I think it's off to races over 14 in the coming sessions, and then maybe get some FOMO. So that's iRobot. That's my rant for now. I'll try and have more detail and specifics to kind of paint a better picture of where I think it's headed, some targets, and some of the fundamentals. And then, it's similar to WW where it's a debt story, right? So, and if that debt story disappears and there's a profitability now, the return to profitability story, I mean, who knows? Maybe it goes in 40s, 50s. So that's iRobot. Uh, and then you look at the longer chart, and I'm not saying it's going to start filling gaps, and I'll post this in the room, but uh, you could see some of the gaps because of the move with Amazon, the deal. Then they had to redo the buyout price and things like that. But now you start looking, and it went from 60 all the way down to under 750 at the end of April. So it's almost like getting priced for bankruptcy. Maybe, but I think the decent risk reward. And you know what? If you're the new CEO, and you come in and he's able to peel back that onion and see everything that's going on in a company, and he still went and bought some shares. I mean, that to me that means that probably bankruptcy is probably not on the table, right? All right, so that's iRobot. CGC, a little disappointing here, even with it being green, the premiums coming out of the calls. I'm not going to touch any more strikes just yet. Hopefully, the good thing, it's over its 50-day moving average again for the second day in a row. If it holds here, and then I think $10 or so is not out of the cards in the coming weeks. And then as we head towards the fall and the election season, and then you have all these referendums on the ballots around marijuana and cannabis and all that fun stuff. I think that will be, you know, I think the market's going to start pricing that in before the elections, right? So I think there's still way more upside for CGC. A little disappointing this morning. I was looking to add some spec calls on Sherwin-Williams. They're not really spec lottos because they're monthly strikes, but they reported earnings, gapped higher, and then it reversed course. And I'm watching it, and the more I looked at the chart, I said this thing might gap fill back to 330, back to its close, or at least its levels from yesterday. So I waited. And then by the time I waited, it was too late. Then it spiked, started to go. And then I've been watching ever since. And I was looking at the 370s, they were like 60 cents. And then I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, the stock's up. It's rarely does it trade up over 7%. I mean, even on some earnings, it's kind of not its normal. Actually, I can find out the last time it's traded this high after an earnings trade. But so does it have more upside? I put it on the watch list and I took it on rant. I think I mean, this is all-time highs or close to it right now. So if it breaks that, then you blue skies. Um, the biggest move it had minus 8% back in January of 2023. So it fell nearly 9% and nearly 9% July of 2 years ago. So interesting factoids. All right, so that's Sherwin-Williams. So I'll probably just pass. Just a little frustrating. I'm gonna look back at it a couple days from now, or a week from now, and watch it go into the 360s and the 370s. I'm gonna be kicking myself, but I just it's just I don't want to be in a situation where I have to monitor another trade, and so that's that. All right, end of SHW. Uh, and then last but not least, I'm gonna say last but not least, Align Technologies. The premiums keep creeping out, and it's up 1% today, and the premiums are still lower. So uh, typically they would start maybe melting a little bit higher. Maybe that's not going to happen until tomorrow. So I was actually looking 310s, 315s, or even the 320s. So I might look at some of those. I mean, the 320s are down nearly 10%. Uh, and even in the money or close to the money, they're barely up despite the stock being green. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm still eyeing it. I keep watching it. If I see an opportunity, I might get some maybe 325s if the spreads tighten up a little bit on those strikes. I think that's about it. I was trying to think of some other things. Oh, just like off topic. I know the election stuff. The chat room. We respect for everybody's opinions and things like that. But we tried to keep off the. Oh yeah, I'll talk about spot in a second. try to keep things on topic and off of politics and religion, right? Because anytime you talk about politics and religion, never is a good conversation with anybody, especially if you have different views, right? Everybody has different views, respect them, so on and so forth. So people post stuff in the chat room. I try and keep, if it's not anything offensive, sometimes they'll stay up. If you have an issue, send me a message. I'll address it. Uh, I always use this example. There was a great book I read, and this is like 5 years ago or whatever. It was about North Korea, and it was so good. I read it within like a couple hours. Just sat there and read the whole book. But it was about this lady who left North Korea. She tried to escape and seek asylum. And the thing that always sticks in my head is the start of the book. It says that she remembers when she was a kid and there was a fire in the house. And what happens when there's a fire in the house? They have to take the pictures of Kim Jong and Kim Jong Jr. off the walls first, out of the fire before everybody else. And then we're on the outside here, and maybe that's a wrong story. That's false. I don't know, right? I mean, people can make up things, but that always sticks in my head because it just shows the belief of those folks with the people who are in that deleting their country, right? They think they're more than just people, I think. So it kind of puts perspective on beliefs and what one people believe in and what other people believe in. Because I'm sure if I went to that house in North Korea and tried to talk to these people, they would not agree with me, right? And we would probably we'd not, I don't know if we'd fight, but we wouldn't talk, right? So kind of that's just how things are. Some people have views they're never going to change, regardless of what I say to them. They're not going to change my view, regardless of what they say to me, and then we move on. So that's my little rant on religious politics. So yeah, in regards to Spotify, similar story with Sherman Williams. I was watching this morning. I thought by closing all-time highs for sure today, maybe 350s, 360s. I was going to get some spec calls, and then it faded. So I don't know if it's going to rally. And the last time Spotify had earnings, they posted monster beat and raise. I think the stock went to 320, and then 5 days later it was at 270. Let me see if I can find the chart for that. So I don't want to be in a position on spot where I get the calls and then tomorrow it just melts down. Let's see if I can find where that was. What was their last earnings date? I can find it. Come on. So Spotify, their last earnings was April 23rd, right? So it closed up the next day after earnings. It closed up 11%. So it opened at 301, hit a high of 319, closed at 303. And then if you look at the chart on SPY in April, it sold off all the way down to 280. And then I think it took the news of them raising prices or whatever when I had the strikes, and that's when it started to take off. So it seems like such a fickle name, and we've already got the Netflix earnings out of the way. So I thought back in April it was almost like people were shifting out of streaming and content companies. Like that sector, the growth was over because you saw Netflix having a monster beat and raise last quarter, and the stock should have been up 10-15%, but it wasn't because they decided to remove subscriber data starting in 2025. So I don't know. I'm watching it today. I'm like, why is this thing? I mean, it's up 12%. So considering it's a large company, 12% is still a pretty big move. But 343 was the high. I think heads into the 350s and if not higher this week. But I don't have that much conviction in it to add some calls. So that's Spotify. Gold's still sitting here up 0.6%. It was actually looked like it was going to fade in the morning, but it didn't. My nugget's still in the red here, despite the move up in the small caps and golds, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, that's about it. Let's see if iRobot holds the 12 here. It's still at highs right now, 1207. The longer I stay on, the higher it goes. Maybe I'll stay on for the rest of the afternoon. 23 minutes left to the close. That's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio tomorrow. Rock and roll.